As soon as you give politicians power, any kind of power that didn't exist previously, if they can figure out a way to force you into carrying something that lets you enter businesses or lets you do this or lets businesses open, historically, they are not going to give that power up. They find new reasons to use it. We have to protect those freedoms at all costs, whether you agree with people's choices or not, because it is the foundation that this country was founded on, freedom. This idea of freedom, there's so many people that think it's frivolous, it's not important, it's not the main thing that we should be focused on, but it is the literal structure that allows this country to be so f***ing amazing. Every single country that's ever existed other than the United States, up until 1776, every f***ing country that has ever existed was run by dictators, all of them. This is the first experiment in self-government that actually worked, and it created the greatest superpower the world's ever known. It created the greatest cultural machine, the greatest machine of art and creativity and innovation right in here. And how did it do that? It did it through freedom. And as soon as you see something, anything that comes along and inhibits your freedom, you should be very cautious of that thing. You should be very suspicious, because anything that comes along that can inhibit your freedom is, by definition, anti-American.
Hi guys, welcome to the podcast, the Boldface Truth Podcast. I'm David Medina. I'm your host today. It's a very interesting morning, to say the least. We have someone in studio right now that I never thought we could get to come to the studio, but we have a Oregon legislator with us. He's a Democrat, Representative Travis Nelson. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You still look a little bit nervous.
I'm a little bit nervous. You know,
I get that.
Folks were discouraging me from doing this, but I feel it's important to have this conversation, so here I am.
Man, and that, dude, let me just tell you something, bro. I respect you so much for that, because, you know, when we have people in our kind of inner circle that are discouraging us from doing something that we think could come up of it, and we kind of just go with our gut, which is what you did. That's what leaders do. That's why you're an elected leader, and you show more leadership than a lot of Republicans here in the state. Just to be honest, just be completely honest with you. But dude, I respect you for that, man, because that takes a lot of courage. I know everybody, we were just talking about that, everybody in your circle, your caucus, everything was discouraging you from coming on this show, but you did it, man. You did it. Well, what made you want to come here? What made you go against all that?
You know, I really appreciated your approach, first of all, and then second of all, I have a lot of conversations with my conservative friends on a pretty regular basis. I grew up in bright red, southeastern Washington. I'm a Kennewick High grad, and a lot of my good friends that I grew up with are conservative to right wing, and we often agree to disagree, but there's a lot outside of politics that we can agree on.
I made the joke. I said, when you told me that back at Starbucks just a little bit ago when we first met, he goes, yeah, I grew up in a conservative area. And I was like, well, you must have started watching Huffington Post or BuzzFeed or something. He goes, actually, yeah, exactly. So, no, man, I appreciate the courage, bro. And I appreciate you being real. Honestly, just talking to you for the few minutes that we had. Now, there are areas we disagree where you've been like, come on, dude. And I've been like, come on, man. But the fact that we're having this dialogue, people don't want this to happen, including the people in our circles and the people like you just said, your caucus and a lot of people around you, your staffers and your legislative team did not want you to come here. They have this false. First of all, they don't want you to come here because, in my opinion,
well, there was concern.
There was concern because of the January 6th and the Salem Capitol. I get that. I'm happy that you allowed me to share the true facts behind that. Because, like I told you, if your team would have just done their research, they would have seen that I'm not a dangerous guy, and there's a reason why I was never arrested. People just did their research and not just look at OPB. But the other reason why that we were kind of talking about is because I don't believe that most people around you want this to happen, because they want to stay in that political inner circle. They want to stay, you know, they want to label us a certain thing because they have all the power. There's no need for you to meet with me. You know, you were talking about upside, right? And they saw no upside to this. Why would there be no upside to you coming? Because at the end of the day, Travis, nobody, how do you want to be addressed, by the way? Probably not Travis.
Travis, Representative Nelson.
Okay, that's what I like
I'm
about
fine
you.
with whatever. We're not in the Capitol building.
I like it. So what I was saying was, why wouldn't you want this dialogue to happen? Conservatives are not going away in this state and in this country. Christians are not going away. Gay people are not going away. LGBTQ. People are going to be people. They're not going away. So we have to find a way to coexist with each other in a respectful way. And obviously there's extremes on both sides, right? We've seen it. We saw it in downtown Portland, right? With the riots. We saw it all over the country with the riots.
Protests,
you might have you call them the protests. I call them the riots because there was destruction and there was violence. But we're going to talk about that too. We're going to let you share your side too, because I want to see why you call them protests and what designates a riot. But we'll get to that in a sec. But my point is that we're not going away, Travis.
Right.
We have to find a way to figure this out. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, a lot of my good friends and folks I grew up with are conservative, right? And people are most comfortable in their bubbles. Yeah. And I think when it comes to who I am, I'm the first openly LGBTQ plus African American to ever serve in Salem in around 160 plus years. People they care about me, and they're concerned that people may want to come after me because of how I show up.
Because you're black. And because you're part of the LGBT, because you're a gay man, right?
Yeah.
Right. They're concerned,
especially after what happened with Club Q and things.
That was the most recent shooting in the gay club, right, in Colorado.
Right, in Colorado. Yeah.
Didn't it turn out that a trans person or someone within the LGBT community was the one that actually shot that up, though?
Well, it was somebody who had.
It wasn't some right winger, right?
I don't know the person's political ideology, and I'm not sure if they were trans or not. But they definitely wanted to take out LGBTQ plus folks.
Yeah, which is something I don't agree with. I'm a Christian conservative. I don't agree with people trying to take you all out. I would hope you don't agree with people trying to take.
I don't think you do, which is why I showed up here.
Right. But there was a lot of hesitation. There was a lot of negative connotations around who I am as a conservative Christian because of that. And my point is, Travis, is the person. First of all, Savannah, are we recording? Okay, good. I want to make sure because this is going to be a good interview. I think it's going to be very productive. But Travis, my point is you just said you don't know the political ideology of the person at Club Q, at the person that shot that place up. It turns out they actually did use pronouns and they actually were part of the LGBT community, from what I've read. And I didn't read that on the right. That was from the actual news. That's a widely known thing. So I feel like you kind of you placed that concern on me because I'm a conservative Christian. Didn't shoot that club up. Didn't shoot up those LGBTQ people.
Well, the conservative Christians are passing a lot of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation or introducing it across the country. I'm not sure what's been introduced across the aisle down in Salem, but we're seeing
like
it all
what
over
though?
the
The Marriage Act, the Marriage for Equality Act that passed right in DC. Right.
Right.
Republicans voted for that. There were some Republicans that voted for that.
There were some. Yes, there were some on the Senate side mostly.
What other legislation is being passed? Because you mentioned it, so I really don't know if there's something I'm missing. What legislation is being passed that's anti-LGBTQ that Republicans are passing?
Well, I think there's a significant portion of the folks on the conservative side of the aisle who are still against LGBTQ plus marriage equality, right? Now, we know that was codified in Washington, but that's not going to prevent a case from making its way up to the Supreme Court. We know that. And who knows what will happen given the dynamics on the court with the 6-3 conservative majority. There's also laws being passed around the country related to trans people and trans youth. We've seen a flood of that in recent years.
So here's where the disconnect happens between how you view this and how I view this, right? So I don't think so. You guys are thinking that there's just some big, like, humongous persecution against the LGBTQ community right now. May have been 10 years ago. In my opinion, this is my opinion. May have been 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, but today it seems like they have more rights and they're more accepted than ever before. There's conservatives that are part of the LGBT community that are welcomed by the conservative movement,
like Matt Slap.
So what is we talked about Matt Slap, grabbing people by the what is it? Didn't he grab a dude?
He grabbed a man by something, allegedly.
Yeah, Matt Slap, he's got to figure it out, man. We had a conversation about that. Matt Slap is an interesting dude. I don't always know where he stands on issues. Sometimes he says things and does things that aren't conservative and that are confusing. So it doesn't surprise me that happened, just given what I know about him. And I got to meet him a couple times. I have a friend that's friends with him. And yeah, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you say you're making it seem like there's this humongous persecution against LGBTQ community, and I'm not saying there's not. I'm not saying that there's people out there that truly do hate you guys, But I'm just saying that the way you guys make it seem like it's like such a widespread problem that all conservatives think this, which is why you had concerns about coming over here. There's nothing that I've ever said about hurting LGBTQ people. I've had a lesbian on this show a few weeks ago. And so that's my point, is I feel like these echo chambers and social media and people and politicians especially, they want to keep us divided, and they put these things in the minds of people like you and me that, oh, this side is actually so extreme. And like Club Q, you brought up Club Q. That has nothing to do with conservatives. That has nothing to do with Christian conservatives. When have you ever heard of a Christian conservative calling for the shooting up of LGBTQ people?
I've heard of conservative folks who attack LGBTQ plus folks. You know, we live in Oregon. We live in the greater Portland metro area. Yeah. Things are a little different here than they are in a lot of other parts of the country. Right. But I still know a lot of people who move here from all over, and they move to Portland because it's a safe place for them compared to where they grew up in a lot of other parts of the country.
Right. And you mentioned trans youth. I think one of the biggest issues, and the issue of transgenderism is something that we could discuss on a later one. I'm trying to just go over the most topics with the time that we have you. But for me, I think for a lot of parents, including myself, because you're a legislator, you're voting for these things, things to be in our school system, to educate our youth on LGBTQ. Is that correct? You're backing some of those bills, and some of the Department of Education, for instance, just came out. The Oregon Department of Education, Travis, just came out and said that students should be able to hide their preferred was it pronouns, or what was it? Pronouns, or how they identify.
I don't have kids, and I'm not on the education committee, so and I'm a little new, so I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a friend send it to me yesterday. I screenshotted it. So it says, Oregon allows public schools to hide official use of neo-pronouns from parents. And so I think the issue is, and this is what I'm talking about with, like, when we have issues as parents or as conservatives, it's chalked up to, oh, we have issues with LGBTQ people and we hate them. That's not true. We should not be encouraging our kids to hide anything from parents, no matter what the issue is in school. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. No.
You think that kids should be able to hide things from their parents?
I think if someone is not ready to come out to their parents, they shouldn't be forced to come out to their parents, right? I think a lot of parents, even parents who are accepting of other gay people in their lives, oftentimes react differently when it's their own child. There's a famous story I can think of, like with Cher, whose fan base is overwhelmingly LGBTQ plus, right? But when her daughter at the time, Chastity, came out to her, she had a negative reaction, and we see that a lot. There are folks in my family who did not have a positive reaction to me initially, and it takes some time, and I think people should be able to come out in their own terms.
What's the definition of a negative reaction to you? If parents just don't accept that their kid wants to transition from a boy to a girl, or from a girl to a boy, isn't that the parents' rights to be able to have a say in that and be able to know about that? You think that kids should be able to hide that from their parents?
So do you think parents should be kicking their kids out who say, I'm confused about my gender identity, or I think I'm wasn't really that I'm not of the male gender, but that I'm of the female gender?
I think if kids are questioning their sexuality or their gender, I think that parents taking any power away from the parents is absolutely wrong. And how dare Oregon and the government of Oregon think that they have a right to say what should be hid from parents and what should be kept from parents and shared with parents. Parents, I don't believe, unless a parent is being abusive, unless a parent is showing signs that is causing emotional or physical distress to the kid, the power to the parents should never be taken away from the parents, ever. They're the parents. They should be the first ones that are notified.
So if a child wants to change their pronouns, you're saying schools should be mandated to report that to their parents?
Absolutely, they're their parents. I guess the disconnect here is what we think, the responsibility parents should have.
I just don't think that's safe for all kids. I don't.
So what you're saying is the schools and the government know better than parents of their own kids?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that kids who want to change the use of their pronouns or how they're referred to should have some control over when that information is disseminated to their parents.
But do you see where I'm coming from, though? Is if I'm the parent of a kid, so look, we could even flip it around. If you had a kid, right? Do you have a kid? Do you have kids?
I don't have kids, no.
If you had a kid, and they said, I want to become a Christian, and I want to become someone that doesn't accept LGBTQ, and the school starts saying, well, you know what, we should, if your dad is gay and he doesn't agree with you on that, you shouldn't tell him. I mean, we could flip this around, and that's what I encourage you to do on things like this, because it's about taking power away from the parents. Like I said, if parents are being abusive, where they're putting their kids' lives in danger, that's a caveat, right? Or that's an exception.
But here's what I would say. I mean, I've got siblings, I've got cousins who have close relationships with their kids. I think if you have a close relationship with your kids, or your kids are comfortable and telling you things, they're gonna tell you that. The only time a child, in my experience, and again, I don't have children, are afraid to actually tell their parents things, and is when they think that there will be some type of abuse that's lodged against them by their parents.
So, and that's what I'm trying to say, is because a lot of our culture today, a lot of social media, a lot of people are doing everything they can to influence our kids away from their parents' influence. And like I said, you're saying if the kids feel that way, well, can't any kid use that excuse then? My point is, you can't just take away power from the parents when it comes to what's best for their kids. It's their kids. They should be able to say, if their kids are going down a path that they don't agree with, it should be up to those parents to tell those kids, hey, look, let's look at it this way. Let's figure this out. Let's go about it this way. But when you completely take the power away from the parents and you say, no, actually government and the teachers and we know what's best for your kid more than you, that's so wrong.
Well, that's not exactly what I'm saying. I mean, in general,
you're saying that kids should hide their pronouns.
I'm not saying kids should hide their pronouns. I think kids should be in control of when they tell their parents. I think it's great having parents involved. I think in general, schools should definitely promote and involve parents in decisions. But I mean, think about this type of situation. What if a 17-year-old girl who is a high school junior or senior gets pregnant and tells their school counselor? So should the school counselor then have an obligation to tell the parents that she's pregnant?
Yes. Why not? Why wouldn't you? So what if the parents are going to be super supportive?
I think if the parents are going to be super supportive, I think the child would have told the parents, or would tell the parents.
What you're seeing, and this is what I'm trying to say here, is like, because Democrats, I mean, you're a Democrat. You're a Democrat in a district that is, like you said, the second deepest blue district.
Yeah,
I mean,
second or third deepest blue district.
You had a big hand in helping Tina Kotek get elected.
I succeed Tina Kotek in House District 44.
Right.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for that, for doing your part in helping your community. I mean, I may not agree with what the things that you think, but I see you trying to do what you think is good for your community. I commend that. I really do. But what I'm trying to say is, you guys are saying, Democrats are saying, and people in your party are saying that we think that we have the right to say that a minor child knows what's best for their life way more than their parent, and their parent shouldn't be involved and if the child feels like they can't reveal stuff. So if a child's pregnant as a minor, the parents that's their guardian, that's their parent. They're legally responsible for them. And just stepping away from a legal aspect, from a moral aspect, that's your parents, man. Like, they deserve to know. So when you start, it creates a slippery slope, in my opinion. It creates a slippery slope, because it's like, okay, if we're going to keep this from parents, then we're going to start keeping other things from parents. It's not right. The parents deserve to know. There should not be anything hidden from parents, no matter what side of the aisle or what side of the issue you're on things. The parents should be in control. That's the disconnect here. And that's the disconnect between conservatives in Oregon and Democrats, is that the Democrats think they know better and that the kids know better, and the conservatives are like, let us do our job as parents. Where am I wrong?
David, what I would encourage you and your audience to do is reflect on their youth, their childhood, their teenage years.
Yeah.
At the time, did you want your parents to know every single thing you did? There were things that I did at school that I would not have wanted my parents to know at the time, and that I only told them many years later. Some of the things I did in high school, I'm just now telling my mom about.
Like what?
And I'm in
I gotta hear one.
I'm in my 40s. So I'm oh man,
we've all been there.
I mean, I skipped a lot of school.
Right.
I hid grades. I did all kinds of stuff. I drank a lot. I smoked my fair share of cannabis in high school. My mom didn't.
Same.
She didn't realize that until I was 30 something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my point is, if we look back on our own youthful years, there are a lot of things we wouldn't have wanted our parents to know.
See, but here's the difference. And here's what we're talking. There's a difference between smoking weed and skipping school and changing your gender and getting hormone blockers and getting all these kinds of drugs, or in some cases surgeries. This is a different level. If we're talking about the transgender issue, that is a lot more. There's a lot more at stake there,
Well,
and a lot more long-term
You
consequences.
just said that anything that happens in school with the kid should that parents should have involvement with that, and so
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of difference there.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that every kid tells their parents everything, and like that happens. That's not realistic, right?
Well, there are some kids that do tell their parents just about everything.
There are, but my point is that the government and your party and people that are in your circle do not have the right to tell parents that they should be kept from anything from what their kids are doing, especially when it comes to changing their sex or changing their gender. That's not right, man. Like because that's not just like, oh, mom, I'm a boy, and then they just go and they just pretend to be. No, they do things. When someone transitions, am I wrong? They transition. They get they in most cases, in a lot of cases, they get puberty blockers. They start changing their appearance.
In some cases, different people transition at different.
They don't
speeds.
stay looking like their gender, right?
I know a fair amount of transgender folks who didn't fully start transitioning into their 20s or 30s, even though they knew much earlier that the sex they were assigned at birth was not who they actually were. People who transition do so at different speeds. And I think something like changing your pronouns, instead of going by he or him to they, them, I just don't think that's something that schools should get out ahead of kids on, for the most part.
Well, we can agree to disagree. I don't even agree with the transgender issue within itself. I think it defies it defies everything we've known for thousands of years about biology and about everything. I don't want to go there today. I do want to get your thoughts on that because you're a registered nurse, right?
I am a registered nurse.
I want to go into that if you ever come back. Hopefully you come back. I want to go into that because there's debates on both sides that bring up good points, but overall I don't, so it goes deeper for me for that issue. But at the end of the day, if we're talking about parents and parental control here, and I don't think that the Democrats, a party that just 10, 15 years ago was like, government, take your hands off of our family and be, the free-spirited and liberalism, that is not the party we find today. That is the party, in my opinion, where they want to control every single aspect of our lives out of the guise of safety and concern. And it's like, that's not how, Travis, that's not how our country was founded. The country was founded on people being free. Yes, there needs to be boundaries. Yes, there needs to be laws. But I just feel like there's so much overreach going on coming from the Democrats. It's insane.
I think both parties have their fair share of control. I think if you were talking to a woman who wanted to have an abortion, I think she would say that the right wing wants to have too much control over her body.
So what is when you think of abortion? Obviously, we see this issue differently, and I'm glad you brought it up. Why do you think there is nothing wrong with ending? I guess you guys don't call it a life. You guys don't call it a baby. We do. That's where kind of the difference is there. But there is obviously something happening in there when a life is ended in a woman's womb, right? And I totally get the argument about like my body, my choice, which I'm glad you guys stuck to when the mandates came around. That was really great how you made us all take shots. But I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Sorry, I had to. We're having fun, folks. We're having fun.
Go ahead, David.
No, but we'll go down. We'll talk about that too because I do want to talk to you about the mandates as well. But when it comes to the abortion issue, how do you guys oversee that there's something happening inside there that's ending something? How do you guys? I know you say, well, women's rights. We could say that about a lot of things. We could say men's rights for choosing to I don't know be an alcoholic and abuse their kids. That's men's rights. That's his right. He's you can't tell him. But see, there comes a thing between right and wrong. And it's like, to me, it's like, go ahead. How do you see the abortion issue?
I just think fundamentally women should have a right to make decisions over their own body. And when they find out they're pregnant, I think how they choose to proceed with that is their decision.
But what about the organism inside of them? What about the baby inside of them that's living?
I think if a woman chooses to go through with the pregnancy, fantastic. If she is not ready to go through with the pregnancy, that's her choice, and that's okay too.
So I'm in good faith. I'm not trying to get you here or anything like that. But why doesn't the baby, the living being inside of that woman, have a choice in this matter? Why is there no rights there? When a woman gets killed with a baby in her stomach from a murder, the murderer is charged with both murders. So the law recognizes it there. The country doesn't have any problem recognizing it there. But why is it like when a woman's just like, I just don't want to have a pregnancy because I'm not ready for it. I'm financially ready, emotionally ready. And why do they get to end that baby's life and that baby has no say? Or that organism, whatever you guys call it inside, has no say?
Again, when a woman is pregnant, I believe that what's in her body is part of her, and I think that she has a right to say what happens with her body in this circumstance. So, this is just another area where I think we're going to agree to disagree.
Absolutely, and we're probably going to be like that on every subject. We're not here to change each other's mind. We're here to get dialogue, and I know a lot of your people might see this. My people are going to see this, and we're going to see the point of this, folks, is for us to better understand each other. Yeah. Because I told you back at Starbucks, we're not going away. Christians aren't going away. None of us are going away. We need to find a way to coexist with each other. We need to find a way to. Because this back and forth, this extremes on both sides, and even just how you perceived me before coming here, which is like, I'm a little worried because of all the violence against LGBTQ. I'm like, well, what violence have we committed? Tell me the last time a conservative has been on the news that a conservative Christian Trump supporter has been on the news slaughtering LGBTQ people. Well,
a conservative Christian Trump supporter slaughtering people. I can't think of any examples.
So why is that? Why is that? I feel like that comes from the politicians, though.
But there's a lot of hatred out there, David, and folks in my community have felt a lot of hatred from people who are quote unquote Trump supporters. I don't think that's every Trump supporter. Like I said, I've got my fair share of Trump supporters in my life. I just found out.
But what is hatred? When you say hatred, define that. What is hatred towards you guys? Because it makes you uncomfortable enough to think that you're actually under violent threat of people that believe that people like me.
Well, there are people who think it's okay to kill or harm LGBTQ plus people. There are still LGBTQ plus people who are victims of hate crimes, who are being gay bashed. Look at what's happening with men who do drag. These are not necessarily transgender folks. These are men, folks who are men during the day, and they
expose
perform as drag queens
at
night, and it's not necessarily sexual stuff, David.
In most cases, it is, Travis.
David, it is not.
Travis, I've been to a drag show before.
You've been to one, right? How many have you been to? How many drag shows have you been to?
I've been to one.
I've been to dozens.
Long time ago.
Okay. And?
Okay. I get that they're not in all instances they're sexual.
A drag brunch is not sexualized in my experience, okay? But those are being demonized.
Why are you guys bringing kids to it though? What's in it for the kids? What are they learning from these drag shows?
Why can't kids come to a drag show?
Because they're inappropriate.
It's a performance. You would take a kid to a
strip
play.
Club. If I want to take a kid, do you think I should take a kid to a strip club?
Show. Do I think I wouldn't take my kid to a
Why? It's a performance.
Show?
They're performing.
Well, I would not take a young child to a show where a man or a woman is completely naked. Do I have something in my nose?
No, I'm just itching. I had an itch.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
No,
all right.
You're good.
Just checking.
You're good.
But I mean, if there's somebody who is a stripper or a performer and their children were aware of that, and they chose to bring their child to some type of performance, I wouldn't necessarily be against that. But
some of the videos we're seeing where these drag queens have their boobs out and they're dancing promiscuously, flying their legs open. Meanwhile, there's a 5-year-old kid right in front of them. I mean, they're dancing promiscuously. You have to admit that there are drag shows that, I mean, one of the overall themes of drag shows is to be themselves, and which is like more promiscuous and be proud of their bodies and be proud. Is that not the goal of drag shows? Is that why drag queens do what they do?
In my experience, the goal of drag shows is for men to dress up as women and lip sync to songs and get dollar bills. That's my experience for the most part with drag shows.
If you want to go to drag shows, I'm okay. Okay, you do what you want. The drag, I don't agree. You won't find me. I went to one because it was for a bachelor party, but you won't find me at them. I don't, because it's just not my thing. Right. I don't agree with some of the stuff that goes on there, but you do. But here's the thing, though. I don't look at you any differently. I don't think, oh, you're less than me because you like to go to drag shows. The overall theme of the kind of what we've been talking about here is, why are kids being exploited, or not exploited, being exposed? Why is there a need from the Democrats and the left to expose kids to drag shows and pornography in schools and all these things, man? I just
well, who's exposing kids to pornography in schools? And just backing up to drag shows. If you want to take your kid to a drag show, that's up to you. If you don't want to take your kid to a drag show, don't take your kid to a drag show. It's just like getting gay married. If you may be against gay marriage, whatever, but don't demonize folks who want to get married, who are of same sex. Just don't get a gay marriage.
One thing I want to say that we do agree on, by the way, is any kind of hate or any kind of like wanting to hurt or murder LGBTQ people is totally wrong. I am with you on that, and I've never called for that, and I've never met anybody in my circle or that I hang out with or conservatives that I met that have called for that. In fact, that's against...
You've never known anybody who wanted to beat up a fag or called somebody a fag. And
because he was a fag?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just said, am I allowed?
Yeah,
I'm not allowed to.
well,
you said it. Gay person.
You said it second.
Because he's gay?
Yeah.
I have never met anybody that says he's gay, and because he's gay, I want to beat him up. I've never met. I don't doubt they're out there, though. I don't doubt they're out there, but they're it's like it's not accepted in the main conservative movement. It's not accepted. It's not accepted by Christians. It goes against everything the Christian faith, my faith, says, which is you love like Jesus and you show people love. It's so. They're sinning, but so are you, you know, and there's a call to repentance. There's a call to follow Jesus, right? But we're called to treat people with love. I mean, Jesus didn't kill people because they were sinners. He didn't kill people. He didn't do any of that. He didn't hurt people. So my point, Travis, is that I'm so tired of hearing that just because I'm conservative and Christian, that I want to hurt people and that people can't meet with me and we shouldn't talk to him because he's just a terrorist and he's conservative. And like, that's what I'm saying, man. Like social media and our politicians are destroying this country. And when it comes to the drag queen, I mean, I just go off of the videos that I see online of the kids being... Isn't
that part of the problem too, though? That you're going off videos you see online, David?
I'm seeing videos, though. I'm not seeing like where there's clever editing. I'm seeing a video of a drag queen flying his legs open, boobs sticking out.
And people online oftentimes pick the worst examples, right? Right. Like if you just went off of what you probably heard of me, and I think you said you didn't do a whole lot of research.
I didn't do any research except what's on your Instagram or Twitter bio.
Some left-wing Black Lives Matter, you know, LGBTQ plus crazy activist, and I think just based on the interaction that we've had, I would think I'm probably a little different in person than what you would have thought I would be like.
That's the difference, because I didn't expect anything than how you're being right now. Oh. That's the difference.
You didn't watch any videos.
That's the difference. I saw one 5-second clip of you with a megaphone fighting for people, the hospital's employing more people because they're so short-staffed or something, which is, it was kind of cool to see. But that's the difference. The left and the Democrats in your party is okay with labeling us all dangerous terrorists who want to kill you guys. But when it comes to us, I mean, there's extremes on both sides. But when I was talking to you, I didn't expect anything than how you're being right now. And I actually like you. You seem real to me. You seem cool. You seem interesting. You don't seem disrespectful. I met you at Target and I had a good first impression. I'm meeting you now. I'm talking to you now. I'm enjoying talking to you now. Even though we don't agree on things, I'm still enjoying talking to you. There is more of that in the world, Travis, than what your party and what the media says and tries to make up these phony things like we're all out to try to kill you, man. That's just not true.
Well, again, people are most comfortable in their bubbles, and whether it's on the right wing or left wing, there are folks on the right who are afraid to engage with folks on the left, and folks on the left who are afraid to engage with the right. And even though I'm from one of the most blue areas of our state, perhaps the West Coast, I felt like it's important to have this conversation, which is why I came on. You just said it. You've never had, I don't think you've had a representative or a government official, my level or higher, from either party on your show ever, right? Even though you've invited a lot of folks.
It's a young show, and yes, I have reached out to a lot of people, but people are so, I mean, the Republicans are right there with you. The Republicans in Oregon are more afraid of how people are going to see them. They're more interested in making you guys be their friend than actually listening to their voters and sticking up for their voters. Because that's why I don't like the Republican Party as it stands here in Oregon, and some of these people, some of these top Republicans, because they're so concerned of being buddies with you guys and what you guys think, instead of telling you guys the truth and being like, look, you know what? Our voters are not terrorists. Our voters are not this. Why don't you get to know them? Yeah, there's a little fraction that are batshit crazy, but so are people on your side of the aisle. You know, they don't do that. They just go along with like, yeah, you know, if they like Trump, they're terrorists, and if they like this, they're a threat to democracy. That those little sayings don't do anything for our country or our state. They make us more divided, because as you're finding out right now, you're talking talking to one of the top conservative activists here in Oregon. You're talking to somebody who was at January 6th. You're talking to someone that has his house raided by the FBI because I walked into the Capitol, was never arrested, was never charged, and you still came here. There was something inside of you that still came here and wanted to have dialogue. And what have you learned about me so far? Am I a terrorist that wants to kill you?
Well,
so far?
I'm still working on that. I don't think you want to kill me, but we met in public first. I enjoyed that dialogue. You seem like a good guy who really wanted to have an honest conversation, which is why I'm here. I do want to back up though,
sure,
and go back to your comment about Republicans in Salem. I do think they care about what their constituents care about. I think that's
assuring coming from the top Democrat.
I think, given the bills that they put forth and the things that they say on the House floor and conversations that I have with them, I definitely think they care about their constituents. There's a lot that we have in common. In fact, I'd say there's more that we have in common than we have that's different.
I disagree. I think that I think in some, I think in some aspect, the Republicans, they do have a little bit that, hey, we need to listen to our people.
They care about their families. They care about communities. They're, the top issues in our state are agreed upon by both Republicans and Democrat, right? Mental health, housing. That's a problem whether you're in Portland or you're in Southern Oregon. Mental health, housing, education, crime and violence. That's a concern no matter where you are.
This is a clip they're probably going to use for their next election cycle because they love using Democrats to try to make themselves look good.
Do they?
They do, because they do. They propped up George Carrillo. They propped up, which is a good guy. I like George. George is a good guy. He's probably going to listen to this. George Carrillo is a good guy. He ran for governor against Tina Kotek in the primaries. I think he's a good dude. But my point is just the current state of the Republican Party. The fact that you're sitting here defending them is a red flag to me.
I'm not defending them,
but
I'm just saying I think they care about their community and their constituents just like I care about.
Let me back up.
There's a lot we can agree on in
and
Salem.
I appreciate you being, saying that, because you don't have to say that, because at the end of the day, they're the opposite party from you and you're fighting them. So I appreciate you saying that. Let me back up even further. You talked about there is no porn in schools. There absolutely is. Do I need to show you like screenshots of the books that are in the libraries of schools that have been approved by the Oregon Department of Education? The books that are showing oral sex happening between two guys, or showing, all those kind of fantasies and stuff. Like there absolutely is porn in our schools, in our reading materials, that parents are raising the red flag on. And maybe you don't hear it because your caucus and your party just seem to I don't know, maybe not care. Because how have you not heard that? There are some really troubling things that I don't want my young kids seeing. I don't care if it's LGBTQ or not. The overall theme was, we are tired of our kids being sexualized. We're tired of the Democrat Party leading that and saying that parents don't have a right because the kids feel a certain way, and parents have no rights if you don't accept your kid. We are the parents. So anyways, that's what I was saying. I would love to show you and share with you some of the books that are out there that some parents are raising the alarm on. I don't know if you want to see that.
Share with me what you're talking about, because again, I'm new.
Right.
I just won my first election in November. I was appointed about a year ago.
Right.
So if there's something I need to be aware of, I'll take a look at it. I mean, we shouldn't have porn in schools, right? I mean, that's not acceptable.
But sexualization. But, like, why are we teaching our 6-year-old about oral sex?
But when, I think if you're talking about like sex ed, you can take your kid out of sex ed. I don't know if
there's one thing about sex ed back in the day where you learn about body parts and you learn about how these body parts function and why they function. And there's another thing, teaching about fantasies like having oral sex with an older person and sexualizing in that way. There's a difference between teaching about biology and teaching about sexualization. And that's the issue here, is a sexualization. Why are we teaching our kids these things? Why are we telling our kids that if they feel like they're a different gender, it's okay to keep it from their parents? That's just so wrong to me, man.
What's the context? Because I can remember, I grew up in the 80s, and we would pass the National Geographic around, and our teacher had a bunch of National Geographic magazines.
Oh, those things scarred me.
And you'd pass the boys, right, mostly, would pass the National Geographics around that would have, women showing their breasts. And that was some of my first exposure to nudity.
They never showed anybody sucking on the nipples, though, like some of these books are doing now these days. I mean, shoot, those are educational purposes,
okay,
right?
if they're educational books, showing men or women sucking on nipples, then I would not be supportive.
Literally a
based
book,
on what you're saying
there's
of those
literally-
being in schools.
There's literally a book in the Beaverton School District and in, I think, the Westland School District. It's called, I forgot what it was called, but it literally shows a boy giving oral sex with a penis in his mouth from another guy, from another older guy that he's fantasizing
Is that still
about.
a sanctioned book?
I believe it's still in circulation, but it's a popular book nationwide that's been brought to attention. But there are other books like that show those kind of things. This is not just teaching about body parts. This is teaching about like things that our kids should not be subjected to.
And this is in an elementary school or a middle school? Okay.
Yes,
all right,
yes,
all right.
elementary, middle.
I hadn't heard about that.
But anyways, I like I said, there is so much disconnect, and as we're seeing now, that there's so many things that maybe I falsely look at on your side and your group.
Thank you for saying that.
False perceptions. There are.
I appreciate that.
I thought you were going to be an egotistical jerk that didn't even want to. Excuse me. I didn't even think you were going to come here, and you did. That shows a lot about me, about you.
No, why did you think I wasn't going to come, David?
Because of the things that you were saying.
Well, I was just being transparent with you.
Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared for my safety. I'm scared about this.
Did I use the word scared?
Well,
I mean,
you didn't say scared. You said I'm concerned.
Concerned.
You said I'm concerned for my safety.
Concerned.
I'm concerned for all this. And my argument has been why? Why are you scared? Because you mentioned Club
and it was
Q.
mainly. Wait, can I just say?
Sure.
It was mainly folks I was talking to who were concerned. Like I said,
your political inner circle.
I don't have a problem having these conversations.
Right.
I have a lot of conversations like this. Like I said, with friends and family. I've got a cousin in law enforcement in Eastern Washington who I found out voted for Trump, and we have our share of political conversations too.
You don't like Trump?
No, I don't like Trump. No.
What are your problems with Trump?
Oh, where do we start? Man, I just I was so glad when he was not a president anymore. Yeah.
Give me
there was so much there.
I mean, here's the thing. It's not a secret that he's pretty polarizing. That he's not good at uniting. He's not that good at uniting. He's he does this and tweets a lot.
Stolen elections. The Twitter was crazy when he was president. I don't think he set the best international example. I didn't agree with how he went about picking judges for the Supreme Court. There's a whole host of things that I didn't love about Trump. I think I think a lot of folks in the labor community were very optimistic about Trump in the beginning. And I think he said a lot of the right things about supporting workers and unions and the right to bargain and having that true collective bargaining experience in the beginning. And I think he let a lot of people down later in his term, especially when he picked Supreme Court justices that are very anti-worker.
Yeah, well, I thought he was a good president, and I'll let you kind of have the floor on that one, just because there's other topics I want to get to, and I don't want to keep you here forever. But I thought he was a great president in so many ways. I thought there was definitely some areas he could have improved, especially like there was an incident where Steph Curry was thinking about visiting the White House, and I was like, this is a perfect time to humble yourself and just be like, because Steph Curry's like, I don't know if I want to
humble yourself and Trump. Do those things go together?
Okay. Well, he goes, I don't know. Steph Curry goes, I'm not really sure if we want to visit the White House, but we're kind of like deciding. Trump goes, here, I'll just beat you to it. You're not invited. And I go, dude, what are you doing? Like, those are the kind of things that like I wish Trump was better at. But overall, as a president, I mean, there was no wars. There was illegal immigration was happening at a lesser rate. He was actually fast tracking the path to citizenship. I don't know if you heard about that, but he was doing a lot of things that people don't talk about that were good for our country. He was, the strength. Obviously, at the end of the day, he was very polarizing. I mean, you don't have to be a super, genius to know that he wasn't the best at bringing people together. But I loved him. I was.
Are you excited about his run?
I was a big supporter of him. I actually don't want him to run though.
In 2024?
I've changed my mind. I'm more of a DeSantis fan. I think DeSantis could be better for the country as far as bringing people together and not pissing people off so much. And I just think that at this day and age, DeSantis is a better person to. If I'm going to choose a Republican, DeSantis would be better for our country than Trump would.
I think Trump's going to win the primary.
I don't think we'll see. We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time between now and then. A lot of things need to happen. But you say things like you mentioned earlier, and while we're on this topic, you said the elections. You said Trump is the big talking point from people on your side is Republicans and conservatives and MAGA Republicans are a threat to democracy. Tell me how we are more of a threat to democracy than any of you guys on your side.
Well, I didn't say that all Republicans were a threat to democracy, but come on, Trump consistently saying that the elections were stolen. He didn't do enough to stop what happened on January 6th.
He didn't incite it. I was there. I heard him. And it's a little clip that they like to take out, Travis. Go find the whole clip where he said, we're going to peacefully march down to the Capitol to have our, where he didn't say, he said, we're going to march down to the Capitol.
Wild. It's going to be wild.
We're going to have
We're going
to have our voices. We're going to go down to the Capitol and we're going to patriotically and peacefully let our voices be heard. It's exactly what he said. It's exactly what he said. And the Huffington Post and all the left-leaning media outlets cut out that part where he says peacefully and patriotically. They cut it out. It's literally a tragedy. If Trump incited it that day, I'd be the first one to be like, you know what, dude, that dude needs to be arrested.
I think there's some things that remain to be seen on that. I don't think that the folks who showed up at the Capitol to overthrow the government did so without having some type of signal from Trump.
Has that been found? Have they found evidence where Trump communicated?
I just said I don't think so. So I'm expressing an opinion.
So we both agree that the violence and the breaking into the Capitol on the 6th is wrong. I came out that night on Instagram Live, and ever since then have always condemned the violence against cops and the breaking into the Capitol. First of all, there were 0.01% of the people that were there that day actually wanted to overthrow they found that in the evidence that there was some oath keepers and some
0.01.
I would say maybe I'll give you a 0.5% maybe. I'll give you 0.5% of people there actually went there to overthrow the government. Everybody else was peaceful, man. Everybody else there that was there were actually peaceful and were actually not there to overthrow the government, that were there to see Trump off. And these little, and it's just like the 2020 riots because I went down to Portland when all that stuff was happening after George Floyd. I went down there.
I was down there a lot.
There was 95. Most of the people there were peaceful. There was a little fraction of people that caused all that violence and stuff. It's the same.
Thank you for saying that.
But it's the same thing, though. We don't. But see, here's where the difference is between how we look at the 2020 riots to how you guys look at January 6th. The conservative media and most of the conservative people are in agreement that the violence and that everything else, the violence and the destruction of the Capitol, was not okay. Mm-hmm. We're in agreement with that. Okay, but the way that the left has made January 6th out to be like it was some big war, some big crazy day where everybody there just went in there to kill and hang people. I mean, first of all,
I don't think it was everybody who showed up.
I'm just saying people on your side, mostly people on your side. I'm not saying you personally, but in 2020 when the riots were happening, there was so much destruction, so much lives being, I'm talking nationwide, not just Portland, so much destruction, so much lawlessness, so much attack against police that wasn't being, I mean, you had Democrat politicians encouraging this stuff, telling people to go out and fight like hell. There are Democrat Maxine Waters telling people to make people uncomfortable. And, so why is it okay for that side to express their political indifferences like that? But when, people go and protest in DC and a little tiny fraction on one day go into the Capitol, go too far, we're all in agreement that was wrong. Why is now all conservatives and Republicans labeled domestic terrorists or threats to democracy when we saw literally 2 summers or a summer of it in 2020 of cities across the nation being burned? Tell me. Cities
across the nation being burned. I mean, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, those same friends of mine who are conservative over in Eastern Washington, I was getting messages and calls from them talking about Portland burning down and am I okay?
Damn near did, Travis.
Portland was I literally live 5 minutes from downtown, right? My neighborhood was fine. There were several blocks downtown where there was violence, and I don't I don't condone violence in any fashion. But it was not the entire city like what was being portrayed on Fox News. I was turning on Fox News and they were talking about Portland burning down and people burning down Portland, and here I am and my North Portland residents not too far from the Rose Quarter saying, hey, I'm pretty close to downtown and I'm not feeling this. So
but But why are so many businesses leaving downtown Portland, Travis? Why is it a ghost town down there?
That is a problem.
Why is that but that's our point though, is like obviously we know if someone
Well, it's not just the violence, right? Like we know there are problems, and like I was saying earlier, both sides of the aisle, whether it's Republican or Democrat, realize we've got challenges with mental health and perceptions around crime and houselessness that are having a negative impact on our urban areas, and it's not just Portland. I'd argue it's Salem, probably Eugene, Medford, and other places in the state.
Yeah, and these talking points, the whole point of what I'm trying to say on this point is the talking points that Republicans and MAGA Republicans and all these Republicans and conservatives are threats to democracy is like so unfair, man. It's so unfair to us.
I think a lot of that comes from the polling. A lot of that comes from the polling too.
But is it reality? Is it reality? I mean, do I seem like a threat to democracy? I'm the most conservative Christian you'll probably ever meet.
You do not seem like a threat to democracy.
But that's what I'm saying. The majority of us are just trying to live our lives and want to be left alone. We're tired of the Democrats and Democrat politicians and some Republicans meddling in our lives and telling us how, what this and that. The whole problem with downtown Portland, Travis, is being chalked up by the local media, by the local, I call them the local fake news. I don't like using Trump's, but they are fake news. I'm sorry. The Oregonian and everything else, they don't tell the full truth, man, because they're chalking up gun violence and all this stuff. And these rise in homicides, crazy increase in homicides in Portland. They're chalking all that stuff up to it's the gun's fault. It's the gun's fault, and it's climate change, and it's all these other things' faults. It's that we're having all this stuff in Portland that businesses don't want to go down there. Why can't somebody just come out and be like, you know what? Actually, the choice to defund the Portland police probably wasn't a good move. The choice to not back up these businesses, the choice to short staff, to not fully support our Portland police so that response times can become shorter. And I worked in downtown Portland for 4 years. The response times when I worked down there were already bad. But when you had a flood of officers leave the force because they weren't feeling backed up, because they felt like every time they go to do their job, they're going to have the ACLU or the Democrats filing lawsuits on them. I mean,
when did the Democrats file lawsuits on the police?
I mean, it happens all the time, man.
When did the Democrats do that?
I mean, they call for police accountability, which I'm fine with, because I know there are some bad apples out there. But again, it's the whole point of what I'm trying to say. It's this generalization of a whole population. The same thing that the reason why the way that you guys don't want to be generalized. Well, all black people don't feel this way or feel this way, right? You don't want to be generalized. That's racist, right? When someone generalizes you and
I don't want to be
stereotypes
stereotyped,
you,
yeah.
right? That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's the same thing that's happening to conservatives. You guys are stereotyping and you guys are generalizing all conservatives because of the actions of a few, or because of like how you think that like we're out to kill you or get you.
But when you guys talk about elections being rigged and elections not being valid, that is a threat to democracy in and of itself.
You guys didn't do the same thing after Trump won? Do I have to pull up the clip? So last thing we'll talk about, because we got cut off there, when you were talking about the being rigged, right? Or about Republicans saying
elections
that was rigged.
being rigged, yes.
Yeah.
All across the country in a variety of states, local levels, elections, yes, can't be trusted.
My point was, you guys were saying the same thing after Trump won in 2016. They were talking about how Russia interfered and that he's an illegitimate president, and they were objecting to the votes. They were crying the same thing. They were saying the same thing, just in different ways.
I think it's different. I think what happened.
Okay, so let's talk about the. I want you. I'm saying this not to change your mind. Yes, go ahead.
Can I finish?
Go ahead.
I think it's different. Because Trump didn't win the popular vote, and even the Republican-controlled Senate Intelligence Committee said that Russia interfered in the election. Also, when you look at Hillary Clinton, she conceded, even though I don't love all of Hillary Clinton's positions, she conceded to Donald Trump. She didn't have to show up when he was inaugurated, and she did. Trump never conceded. He wouldn't show up at the inauguration. I mean, I think the way that Hillary Clinton treated Trump and the immediate aftermath of the election is completely different than the way Trump has treated Joe Biden.
That's fair. But the months following, even up until 2022, Hillary still claims that she had stolen from her. That it was.
She claimed, as I recall, that Russia interfered with the election, which is what the Senate Intelligence Committee, you can Google it, came to.
So
and
fair
that was
enough.
a Republican-controlled committee.
So fair enough. The Twitter files just found out that the FBI and the Department of Justice colluded with Twitter. And showed that Twitter and the FBI asked for the suppression of the Hunter Biden story, asked for the suppression of.
Are we doing Hunter Biden?
I'm not going to go into that because I honestly it's that I feel like is a hill so many conservatives have died on, but it does bring up a lot of hypocrisy, which is why they bring it up. But all I'm saying is there was a lot of crazy things that happened in 2020. And I'm not one of those that says, you know what, the election was absolutely stolen. I think deep down in my heart that it absolutely was rigged. I do, but I'm not going to, because no one knows. No one knows. We haven't done a full deep dive. And so if someone says, if you had to guess, was the election stolen, I would have to say, well, you know, I don't have the evidence, so probably not. But there were a lot of weird things that happened, Travis, which is why people think it was rigged. That night on 2020, on the election night, when Trump was leading in all of the battleground states, and I'm just telling you this, not to change your mind, but just to tell you why we think this. Mm-hmm. That night, Travis, the counting stopped. For the first time ever in our election history, the counting of ballots stopped. And then the very next morning, all of a sudden, Joe Biden spiked up in votes where there was a bunch of ballots that came in that all went for Joe Biden. Okay, that's weird within itself. Is that enough to say a election was rigged? Probably not, but it's really weird, and it definitely looks like it, right? Where my problem is, where I think it was probably rigged, was the complete dismissal of all of these legit, in my mind, these legit things to look into. It was just completely dismissed by the media a week after Trump was claiming this and everything was coming out. Nobody wanted to look into this. No Democrat politician was like, you know, these are actually, they kind of have let's look into this. They're like, nope, everything's good. Everything was good. Most secure election in history. And they just didn't even allow due process to happen. That is what's more weird to me than the things that actually happened on 2020. It was how dismissive they were on those things. And so that's why we think the way we do. Nobody truly knows. Nobody knows at the end of the day. I have a hunch, but nobody truly knows.
I think we do know. I think we do know. I think votes have been counted and recounted and recounted and recounted in the key states, and I think we do know.
Last thing I want to end on the mandates. Were you a big supporter of the mandates? Your party definitely was. I mean, Kate Brown and your caucuses and the Senate caucus and the Democrats across the board were pretty supportive of vaccine passports and pretty supportive of mask mandates, and which aren't laws, but they were supportive of those measures. Were you in that boat with them?
So I was not in office then, but I was working as a union rep at that time, a union rep advocating for nurses, and my position at the time was that people should get vaccinated. I encouraged vaccination. I have been vaxxed and boosted, and I've never had COVID. Every test I've ever taken has turned up negative.
I know a lot of unvaccinated people that don't have COVID either. That never gotten it either. Just FYI.
I believe you.
So you're a big supporter of the vaccines?
I believe that vaccines work.
The COVID vaccines in particular, guys, not like all the other. Because I've had other vaccines, and I'm not anti-vax, but I am anti-COVID vax. So you're a supporter of COVID vax?
Yeah, I do think that COVID
even given what we know today, everything coming out, even the CDC yesterday saying that they need to look into this.
I think given the fact and given where we were, I would recommend that people get COVID vaccinations. What I will say is for the people who had religious exemptions, medical exemptions, and sincerely held beliefs, I believe that those should be respected, and I don't think that was always the case. I do think that in some cases, folks could have been could have been made to wear an N95 mask instead of being terminated, or instead of being terminated, put on some type of protected leave. I think some places went too far with terminating people,
like our governor, like Governor Brown.
Well, and what we saw with a lot of hospitals was a lot of the hospitals that terminated these healthcare workers because they wouldn't get the vaccine. When crap really hit the fan and they got really short staffed, they were bringing people back to work without a negative COVID test, so not knowing whether they had COVID or not. So.
My thing is, it comes down to one thing. First of all, we didn't know a lot about COVID when these mandates were happening. We still didn't know everything we knew about COVID. We still didn't know, and I kind of blame Trump on these vaccines because it happened under his watch.
He did a good job with vaccines.
He pushed them. See, I think he did a bad job because these vaccines, we still don't. I mean, you're a registered nurse. I've looked up pretty much every vaccine that's come out in the last 30 years, and they have all gone through rigorous trials, years of trials, because when you test a new medicine out or you test a new treatment out, you have to know that there could be short-term and long-term effects, and we won't know those long-term effects until we try it out and see them, right? And so in my thing, it was like, why are we pushing vaccines? And not only pushing them, but people are losing their jobs, Travis. So you got nurses that we helped save their jobs, by the way, with exemptions. But we had nurses, you had doctors, you had teachers, you had state workers losing their jobs and their livelihoods because they refused to get vaccinated. I mean, your party not only pushed it, you guys caused it to affect people's lives in a big way. Things that were only out for months.
Well, look, I
didn't even end up stopping COVID.
I was not in office at the time. We were in a situation where we were trying not to overwhelm the hospital systems, and I think for the most part, things didn't get as bad as they could have in Portland and in Oregon. But like I said, I wasn't in office at the time, but I think there's some things that could have been different.
You would have stood up to your entire party, because it was your entire party that was pushing all this. And
like I said,
Governor Brown was a bat out of hell. She was literally just it was tyranny, man. The way that she had no checks and balances, kept repeating states of emergencies, and it's so, I don't know.
Well,
man.
What I will just encourage you to do, because I was vice president of the Oregon Nurses Association for part of that time, just go take a look at ONA's stance. And I would encourage you to review that after we finish this interview.
Yeah, I just don't, and I will. Maybe you can send me a link to it so I don't forget, because I will forget. I would like to take a look at that, but at the end of the day, I don't think people should have been losing their jobs. I don't think our kids should have been masked. Our kids were the least susceptible of spreading the virus. I mean, that's not me saying that. That's the experts saying that the kids were the least ones dying from it. They're like 100 kids, like a few hundred kids that died from COVID throughout the whole nation, like 2 or 3 here in Oregon. And yet we're having these extreme measures of masks and everything that's kept her out of school for 2 years because the Democrat Party said that kids can't go to school unless they have masks. Travis, it goes to this whole point of why aren't we just allowing people to make decisions for them and their families? Why is there so much overreach? We didn't even talk about Measure 114 with the unconstitutional ban on guns. Maybe we can talk about that next time. But there's so much overreach, man. And
Measure 114 doesn't ban guns.
It bans the sale of guns without a permit. It puts a lot of constraints on something that our Constitution says there should be no infringement on it. It puts a lot of constraints on it. Stores can't sell guns with over 10 rounds that hold over 10 rounds. I mean, there is just, again, that slippery slope. You say it doesn't ban guns, but it makes it a hell of a lot harder for a normal citizen to just go purchase a gun to protect his or her family.
If people want a gun to protect their family, they should absolutely be able to have a gun to protect their family.
But Measure 114 is 100% unconstitutional. It really it is.
We'll see what happens.
There was already a Supreme Court decision that already ruled on some of the stuff that was in that bill. But at the end of the day, it's like, why are we making laws? What's the purpose? Why is Measure 114 a thing? Why is it such an emergency? Why is it such a thing? Why I'm trying to figure out where you guys are coming from on why you felt like you the need to pass this huge gun bill that makes it harder for the normal law-abiding citizen to get a gun. Why did you guys feel like you needed to do that?
Gun violence is a problem, and Republicans worked with Democrats at the national level to pass gun safety legislation. There have been more mass shootings than any of us really care to have dealt with. We need to find a way to eliminate mass shootings, period. And people are frustrated with gun crime, and so that's where Measure 114 came from. You've
already stayed longer than you could and should have, or not should have, but you said you had. So I'm gonna end it on that. I'm gonna let you have that last word. Tell people how they can find you, how they can follow you, and where how to get a hold of you, how to. how to get a hold of Travis Nelson, how to see what he's up to.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I post a lot about workers' rights, union stuff. I'm very pro expansion of healthcare, single payer healthcare. So find me on Twitter. I also have a Representative Travis Nelson Facebook page and a Travis Nelson, I believe, for state representative.
How far are you trying to go in politics?
I am a House representative representing House District 44 Northeast Portland, and that's all I'm planning on doing at this point.
At this point, no future plans, no aspirations to
I
maybe
feel
be
I feel
Congress?
grateful to be here. I feel grateful to be where I am, and I look forward to working across the aisle with Republicans on some good legislation.
I'm sure you are. They're going to be your best friends in there because that's what the Oregon Republicans are.
I think we're going to get a lot of good stuff done for the citizens of
you
Oregon.
You can sense some saltiness in there. Travis Nelson, Representative Travis Nelson, I really appreciate you, man. And I just met you today for the first time, and I already respect the hell out of you, man, because I think it takes a lot of courage to come here and to share your ideas. You guys are winning. You guys are winning everything here in Oregon. You guys are in charge of every chamber, every level of government, and you didn't have to do this. And there's something inside of you that shows your heart, and I think it shows that you're a true leader. And some of your colleagues may disagree with you doing this, but it is good for the community on both sides that two people that are, well known in their communities and well known in the state that are complete opposites politically can still come together and have a conversation. They don't want that. A lot of these people in charge and these people, they want to keep us divided because they make their money off of that. And so it takes a lot of courage to come here, man. I appreciate you. I had a good time, man. I really did. I had a great time. If I didn't, I wouldn't be saying it. So
better than expected. I think I told you I was going to give you 30 minutes, and I've been here like an hour and a half.
Yeah, I need to buy you lunch. Are you hungry?
Well, we can talk about that once the camera's off.
I got you, man. Hey, bro. Thank you so much. I hope you come back.
All right.
Firmest handshakes he's ever had, too, by the way.
All right.
Guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.